will when Donald J. Trump is back in the White House. Now, I want to say just one other thing, because I think it's important to reflect on how each of our respective campaigns is making our pitch to the American people, because I think it says a lot about who the candidates themselves are. We're not just voting red team versus blue team. We're voting for a person who's going to be president of the United States. I'd like to compare my running mate to the person at the top of the Democratic ticket. Remember, we all saw it a few months ago when President Trump took a bullet to the ear, nearly killed the man, and stood up seconds later and raised his fist in the air in defiance. We all remember that moment. How can we forget it? Half of you have it printed on your T-shirts, it looks like, but you should, because it was a proud moment. But here's the other thing. Something you probably haven't heard is about a month later, during the second assassination attempt on President Trump's life, and it's crazy to even say that, but it happened. I was sitting at home with my son in Cincinnati, and I get a call, and it's the president. And I said, "Hey, sir, what's going on?" He said, "JD, they just tried to do it again." And I said, "They tried to do what again?" He said, "They tried to shoot me again." And this was well before the news had become public. I guess I was the first person that he called to tell. And I said, "Well, how are you doing, sir? I mean, clearly physically you're okay, but, how are you doing? That's a pretty traumatic thing that just happened." And he said, "Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm kind of pissed off because they wouldn't let me finish my round of golf. I was about to make a birdie on the 6th hole. I'm dead serious." That's what he said. I was more tore up about it than he was. And I realized in that moment that this is the kind of person that you actually want in the Oval Office of the United States of America, because, look, it's not an easy job, my friends. It's a stressful job, but who do we want in the Oval Office? Do we want a person who runs away from friendly American media interviews, or do we want a person who shows literal courage under fire? That's Donald J. Trump, and that's our president, and we're going to make him the whole country's president in just one short week. But that is the kind of man that is at the top of the Republican ticket. And let's compare how the Democrats are making their closing message to the American people. Because I don't think that I've ever seen a more disgraceful closing argument than what I've seen from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And look, it's fine. Look, politics is politics. I volunteered for this job. Criticize me, attack me, insult me. It's what I signed up for. But don't you dare insult the brave Americans who are fighting for this movement. Don't attack the voters of the United States of America. And that's what Kamala Harris is doing. Because you know what they compared just 2 days ago? We had this incredible rally, over 100,000 people at Madison Square Garden in New York City. It was an incredible thing. We had patriots from all over the country showing up, speaking, volunteering, and of course we had over 100,000 New Yorkers who showed up for the rally itself. And you know what Governor Tim Walz and the entire Democrat machine have been comparing that rally to? A Nazi rally from the 1930s. They've been calling, rather than persuade their fellow Americans, they've decided that they're going to call their fellow Americans Nazis and fascists, and I think it's disgusting. And a person who would close out her campaign by running and attacking her fellow Americans has no business leading the greatest nation on earth. And it occurs to me that when they attack us as Nazis, it's so disgraceful because there are people in this room right now who have grandparents, who have parents, or who they themselves fought in World War II. I met a World War II veteran literally 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, and there he is right there. Thank you, sir. God bless you. And you think about this. This is a man who actually fought real Nazis, who actually cared enough about this country to put his life on the line for it. And you think about when Kamala Harris calls us Nazis, I couldn't help but think about this brave gentleman in the front row. I couldn't help but go and look at a photo of the people who stormed Normandy back in June of 1944. And I wonder, do you think those men today would like how their reputation and their brave and heroic deeds were being used by Kamala Harris's campaign? Here's my honest view. If you think that the men who stormed the beaches at Normandy did it to give taxpayer-funded sex changes to illegal aliens, do you think that the men who stormed the beaches at Normandy did it to ship all of our good manufacturing jobs off to China? Do you think the men who stormed the beaches at Normandy did it for a president who wants to open the American southern border? I don't think so. And in fact, I think that if you believe those men were fighting for taxpayer-funded sex changes and to open the American southern border, the technical term to describe you is a dipshit. And that is... So my message to Kamala Harris is, why don't you try persuading your fellow citizens? Why don't you try talking about how you're going to lower grocery prices? Why don't you try talking about how you're going to undo your own disastrous border policies? Do not dare go in front of the cameras and call your fellow citizens Nazis. If you want to lead this country, act like a leader and stop insulting your fellow citizens. And with all gratitude to everybody who served, with all gratitude to everybody who, of course, you're here, so I'm assuming that you're at least open to voting for the Trump-Vance ticket, but I think by the applause, more than open to it. I want us to not do what Kamala Harris is doing. And I want us to actually follow President Trump's lead here because, yeah, President Trump can dish it out as well as anybody. He's the best counterpuncher in American politics. But when President Trump goes after his political opponents, he goes after Kamala Harris and he goes after Tim Walz. He criticizes the people who stepped into the arena, which again is his right to do. Every person who steps into the arena asks for it. But you know what Donald Trump doesn't do? Donald Trump doesn't attack everybody who's going to vote for the other side as a fascist or a Nazi. He doesn't demean his fellow citizens, even the ones who aren't going to vote for him. And so I'd ask us to follow that lead. Let's give Kamala Harris and Tim Walz hell. Let's remind the American people that they can't afford groceries or housing because of the policies of Kamala Harris. Let's remind our fellow citizens that the open border is because Kamala Harris has failed to do her job. But let's remember that after we win, we are all the part of a great American family. And yes, even the people who voted against Kamala Harris, we love them and we want their peace and their prosperity too. Thank you. God bless you, Michigan. Thank you for having me, and I guarantee I'll be back. Thank you. Now, but before I hit the road, we do have a few reporters in the back, and I think we've got some local folks. So let's take a few questions from the local reporters.
Yes, James Felton from WNEM TV5. We are the CBS affiliate here in Saginaw.
How you doing, James?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right. Every year since 2008, Saginaw County and Michigan have voted for the eventual winner of the presidential election. So for the path to 270, how important is it for your campaign to carry Saginaw County and Michigan?
Look, it's extremely important. Michigan is one of, if not the very most important battleground state. And to your point, Saginaw County is a very important part of the state of Michigan. But I think the folks here in Saginaw County, our argument is very simple and very direct. Is do you want to go back to the peace and prosperity of Donald J. Trump, or do you want to double down on the failed policies of the last 4 years? Because when you don't have to agree with everything that I say, you don't have to agree with everything that Donald Trump says. But when you look at the 1.5% inflation when Donald Trump was president, when you look at the fact that take-home pay was rising as fast as it had in 40 years, you look at the fact that the border was closed down and the world was more peaceful, I think a lot of Americans would just like to go back to the prosperity and the peace of Donald Trump's leadership. And that's what we're fighting for. So I feel very good about Saginaw County. I feel very good about the state of Michigan. Of course, the voters will make the ultimate decision, but I think the voters of this great state are going to vote for change. They're going to vote for peace. They're going to vote for prosperity. They're going to vote for Donald J. Trump. Thank you. Next question.
Hello, Senator. My name is AJ Jones, WCMU local public radio station. I have a question about foreign policy.
Sure.
This week, the Israeli parliament passed a law that would ban UNRWA, the United Nations Refugee Agency for the Palestinians. The Biden administration opposed that decision. Now, I want to give you the floor here. Would a Trump-Vance administration support Israel banning UNRWA? And as a follow-up, would you earmark any federal aid for humanitarian causes in Gaza as the current administration has?
So, a couple of things. First of all, of course, we want to save as many civilians, both Israeli and Palestinian, as possible. The most important way to do that is to end the war. And this is why I think that Donald J. Trump, I've never seen anything like it in American politics, where you've got the people in the United States who are a little bit more pro-Palestinian and the people in the United States who are a little bit more pro-Israel. I think they recognize, both of them, that Donald J. Trump is the best candidate because he's the candidate of peace and prosperity. And that's a big difference. When you've got a chaotic leader like Kamala Harris, when you've got a person where fires just spring up all over the world, everybody knows that it's the innocent people who get caught up in the conflict who suffer the most. We cannot have an incompetent leader in the Oval Office. We can't have Kamala Harris. So to your specific question, look, my understanding about UNRWA is that you actually have explicit connections to terrorists for some of the employees on the ground there, right? That's disgraceful. And that means that whether the entire organization or certainly some of the people on the ground, they have to do better at vetting their people so that you don't actually have explicit terrorist connections. Again, we all want to save Palestinian civilians. We don't want to support the terrorists on the ground who are killing innocent Israelis in the process, right? And I think those goals are totally compatible. Let's save as many Palestinian lives as possible, but let's not empower the terrorists who are murdering innocent Israelis. We can do both of those things at the same time. Next question.
Hi, Senator. I'm Carol Thompson from the Detroit News. Thank you for taking a question. Given Elon Musk's large spending in this race, would a new Trump administration give preferential treatment to Tesla over the Detroit Big Three automakers?
No, of course not. Look, I'm personally thrilled to have Elon's support, and people have to remember, Elon was a center-left Clinton Democrat 4 years ago, and now he's putting on dark MAGA hats because he's sick of the craziness and wants to get back to common sense. And I think that's why. And I think that's why Elon is supporting our candidacy. It's not because he thinks that we're going to do anything for him. It's because he thinks that we're going to make the American nation more peaceful, more prosperous, and more secure, and that's what we're going to do. Now, of course, look, I love the big three automakers in the state of Michigan. I want the big three automakers to thrive and to survive, but they're not going to if we keep on forcing electric vehicles made in China down the throats of American consumers and American workers. So obviously, Elon is very interested in electric vehicles, and the president, ribs him from time to time that, look, if you want to make electric vehicles, great. We don't want to force anybody to drive anything. That's the whole point. But our belief is that the way to empower the American automobile industry is to let consumers decide and let Michigan workers do what they do best, which is make great automobiles. Next question.
Hi, Senator. Simon Levy in New York Times. My question is about your comments at a town hall with Moms for America where you said that in an ideal world where illegal immigration is brought under control, those resources used to manage illegal immigration would be used to expand legal pathways of citizenship. Could you be specific how the Trump administration would dedicate resources to that, assuming illegal immigration is brought under control?
Well, look, you have people right now who are doing it the right way, who have been in some backlog for years, and they're not able to have their claims processed because we're spending so much money on illegal immigration that we're not doing anything other than basically facilitating the massive illegal invasion into the United States of America. That has to stop. And when it does stop, not only will we save resources that can better be used, I mean, look, if a person has done everything the right way and needs to have their claims processed, we ought to process their claims so long as they're following the law. We should not be facilitating illegal immigration to this country. So spend money on one thing, don't spend money on the illegal immigration. I think that's pretty simple. But the other thing we have to be honest about is that we are actually spending ourselves into bankruptcy by spending on illegal aliens instead of American citizens. And this is a very serious problem. You know, Kamala Harris, it's so interesting. One of the many lies of their campaign is that she says Republicans are going to go after Social Security and Medicare. You know what's going to bankrupt Social Security and Medicare? Giving it to illegal aliens, which is exactly what she's promised to do. It's very simple. Now, I've seen estimates from anywhere between $100 billion or $400 billion. That's the amount of money that we spend on illegal aliens in this country every single year. We're talking about Medicare fraud, Social Security fraud. We're talking about housing benefits, welfare benefits. Why can't we have a United States government, an American leader that focuses on the people who have the legal right to be here? Why can't we do that? I just don't get it. And I don't understand. And I don't understand why Kamala Harris thinks that it's racist for the American people to have a border. I don't understand why Kamala Harris thinks that she ought to accuse her fellow citizens rather than solve the problems that she created. I don't know. I've never seen a campaign in the history of the United States of America that when confronted with a massive problem like the illegal immigration problem of Kamala Harris, instead of saying, you know what, I screwed up, I'm going to fix it, Kamala Harris attacks her fellow citizens and tries to silence them. I think it is disgraceful. We ought to have an American leader who, when the American people are drowning in illegal immigration, says, you know what, we're going to help you and we're going to solve the problem rather than attacking you for noticing the problem. And now, I want to leave you with one final thought, my friends, and I want to make sure I got my notes here because I don't want to screw this part up. This is the most important part because I want to ask you three things. Three things before you guys leave here today. Number one, I want you to go, or you can do this at home, go to the website swampthevoteusa.com. That's where you can check your registration, check your polling location, check your absentee ballot request, or if you're so inclined, get involved in some of the ground game that we have here in the state of Michigan. That's swampthevoteusa.com. Number two, this is the second thing I'm going to ask. I want you guys to get out there and talk about why you're voting for Donald J. Trump, especially on social media, on text message, on email, whatever method of communication you use. Get out there and tell people why you're voting for Donald J. Trump. Because again, Kamala Harris and her corporate media allies, they're never going to tell the truth about this movement and about our candidate, but you can tell the truth. And if you do that, we're going to win the state of Michigan. And this is the third and final thing. I want to get every single person in this auditorium, in this gymnasium, every single person, get out there and vote 10 times. Now, our friend from the New York Times is going to be headline news later that J.D. Vance comes to Saginaw and encourages mass voter fraud. Here is the legal way. The legal way to vote 10 times is take yourself to the polls and get 9 of your friends and family to go along with you. That's the legal way. Because I think, the stakes, the media tries to make this much more complicated than it is. We're trying to make sure that our fellow citizens have leadership that is fit to serve in the White House. We want our fellow citizens to be able to afford groceries. We want our fellow citizens to be able to afford housing. We want our fellow citizens to have a secure southern border and safe neighborhoods. And the only way we're going to do that is if we fix the broken leadership in Washington, D.C. In 7 days, my friends, that's exactly what we're going to do. Donald J. Trump for president. Let's get it done. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Hello, Detroit auto worker, let me thank you for your time. You work a 40-hour week for a living, just to send it on down the line. Hello, Pittsburgh steel worker, let me thank you for your time. You work a 40-hour week for a living, just to send it on down the line. This is for the one who swings the hammer, driving home the nail, for the one behind the counter, ringing up the sales, for the one who fights the fires, the one who brings the mail, for everyone who works behind the scenes. You can see them every morning in the factories and the fields, in the city streets and the quiet country towns, working together like spokes inside a wheel. They keep this country turning around. Hello, Kansas, Wheatfield farmer, let me thank you for your time. You work a 40-hour week for a living, just to send it on down the line. Hello, West Virginia coal miner, let me thank you for your time. You work a 40-hour week for a living, just to send it on down the line. This is for the one who drives the big rig up and down the road, for the one out in the warehouse bringing in the load, for the waitress, the mechanic, the policeman on patrol, for everyone who works behind the scenes with a spirit you can't replace with no machine. Hello, America. Let me